What's up, guys? Just gonna wait to see if we get some more people in the room. And we will start talking some 905. So, of course, drop a comment if you have anything you want to discuss as we go. Of course, the biggest news comes that Malachi Flynn is going to be on the 905. So he was sent to the bubble yesterday. The issue is going to be, of course, what everybody's going to be curious about is Malachi Flynn going to play the whole season there. I saw a lot of stuff, read a lot of stuff online that people are shocked that he's going to go down. Is he a bust of a draft pick? Guys, this is not your typical season. The 905 season, regular season, only goes until March the 6th. So he's gone to the bubble now, so theoretically he's gone. The season doesn't start until next week. But he's only gone for a month. Worst case scenario. They haven't really ironed out yet how the logistics are going to work in terms of coming back to the NBA, if they're going to have to quarantine. They don't really know a whole lot right now. They've released the schedule. They've released the rosters. But aside from that, there are not a whole lot of details right now. So I think Malachi Flynn going to the G League is going to be a great move. Again, it's only going to be for 5 weeks. They're only playing 15 games. So he's going to certainly start. When we go through the full roster preview, I had targeted Jalen Harris as the likely starting point guard for the Raptors in 905, but I don't think that'll be the case with Malachi Flynn. I think the big issue that we saw in the preseason, he was great. He had 2 amazing games. He was the second coming. His rookie cards were going for $500 on eBay right away. And then we saw with NBA talent, he looks a little bit shaky. He looks a little bit hesitant. His defense has been okay, but he's missing open shots. He's not really making the right decision every single time. So I think putting him back in a situation, and look, guys, at the end of the day, again, he was a very late first-round draft pick. I know we like to say that Masai and Bobby Webster never make a bad decision in terms of drafting, and generally they don't. And again, it's certainly not a bad decision, but this is the end of the first round. So would it be great for him to be a contributor in the first month of the regular season? Of course, but not always likely. So we'll see. So, of course, he's going to be the biggest question mark. He's going to be the one with the most eyes on him, see what he's got. I'm excited to see what he's got. I was hoping that he was going to go to the G League the entire time. I think that's going to be the best place for him. And look no further than Fred VanVleet scoring 54 points the other night against Orlando as someone who started in the G League. Pascal Siakam started in the G League, Chris Boucher. It's not... I think there's sort of this expectation that the G League isn't very good. It's very high-quality basketball. It's very high-quality competition. Thoughts on Masai's contract expiring after this season? I mean, we just saw that today Bobby Webster re-signed a long-term contract. We don't know the exact details of it yet. I know Masai said that he was going to take care of his staff first. So Nick Nurse has got the long-term deal. Bobby Webster's got the long-term deal now. Is Masai going to be next? I'm worried that he's not. I do think that with Nick Nurse and with Bobby Webster locked in, that gives us a pretty good foundation to start. I think Masai is the guy that's going to attract big-name free agents if we ever get to that point. I think he bridges the gap with a lot of players. That was the hope with Giannis that we missed out on. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised to see Masai leave the front office altogether of any NBA team and start working directly with the NBA, with Basketball Without Borders. I think there's a lot of stuff Masai Ujiri wants to do that is bigger than being the president or the general manager of a basketball team. Of course, you hear about the New York Knicks a lot, about him going there. I don't know. I mean, he came to Toronto, a franchise that's in a different country, that's never won a championship before, and he built the team that won the NBA championship. So in terms of proving himself, I don't think he needs to prove himself. I think that if anything, he's got bigger things to do. I'm definitely not hoping the Knicks, dating back to 2000 when the Raptors played Larry Johnson the first time they made the playoffs and they got swept by the Knicks. No, I hate the Knicks. They're my least favorite franchise, and it's been nice to see them failing quite a bit. Though I would like to see RJ Barrett be on a winning team. So I don't see the attractiveness of going to the Knicks. I think is sort of what I'm getting. I don't know why he would go there. What would he have to prove? Yeah, it's a big market, and as a Canadian, maybe I just don't get it. But I don't think he really thinks like that either. So I would like to see Masai get signed on the dotted line, but if he doesn't, the fact that we have Nick Nurse here for a while and Bobby Webster here for a while, the franchise is in good hands. So I guess we will get into the start. Unless there's any other questions, I'll get into the 9/05/2021 roster preview. This is also up on my website, which you can find in my link tree, my Instagram, my Twitter. I did the written version as well. So I'm going to go through here on the Twitch. So we're going to start with Jalen Harris, which I mentioned before Malachi Flynn got sent down. I thought that Jalen Harris was going to garner the most attention on the 9/05 this year. Of course, he was the Toronto Raptors' second-round draft pick this year, and he's one of the 2 Toronto Raptors that are on a 2-way contract this year, and that's a little bit different this year as well. Usually there's a lot of regulations about how much time a G League player can spend with the big club in terms of days, meaning even practicing with them, and also in terms of games. Whereas this year, because of the pandemic, they've said anybody on a 2-way contract can spend an unlimited amount of days with the team and play in 50 NBA games, which is, we're playing a shortened season of 72 games, so they can be with the big club almost the entire time, which is good. So he is one of the 2, along with Yuta Watanabe, that are going to be the 2-way players. But of course, being the second-round pick and selected by the Raptors, he's going to get the most attention. He played for the Nevada Wolfpack in his junior and senior seasons. I have noticed that a lot of the guys on the 9/05 this year that are coming from college were 4-year guys, and that is usual for the G League. But I think more so this year, the Raptors franchise looked for a lot more guys that are further down the path. They're not so much projects, so much as guys that might be able to slot in or trade. I don't know if that was on purpose or if that's just sort of how the chips fell, but there were a lot of 4-year seniors coming out of college that are on the team this year. So during his final season with Nevada, Jalen Harris averaged 21.5 points, 6.5 rebounds. He was first team All Mountain West Conference and Conference Newcomer of the Year. He's best known for his shooting ability from behind the arc and from the mid-range, and he's an exceptional free throw shooter as well, shot 87% from the free throw line. He did have some pretty decent rebounding numbers in college. Underrated defensive strong point, which I think is good. It's another thing that the Toronto Raptors, as we know, always want to focus on is their defensive prowess. Nick Nurse is a defensive guy. He likes guys that can shoot the 3, and he likes guys that can play D, which he does. His scouting reports coming out of college, they gave him very high praise for his basketball IQ, which is another thing that the Raptors 905 value very highly. Nick Nurse, we've seen with his early season rotation, if you're not making the right decisions, if you're not in the right spot, you're going to find your ass on the bench. And Jalen Harris has shown really good basketball IQ in college. Of course, the 905 do have a new head coach this year in Patrick Mutombo. He spent 4 years on the staff with Nick Nurse. They're giving him an opportunity to run a team, which I assume is probably going to lead to him getting an NBA job, but that's okay. And we're going to see how Patrick Mutombo implements him. I've seen a couple videos, a couple interviews that he's done. Mutombo seems to be more on the motivational, inspirational side as opposed to an X and O's guy. Every coach, has their X's and O's and has their plays that they're going to draw up, but he does seem to be more of the, find the puzzle pieces, know how to play guys and where, which I think he got from Nick Nurse, who's a big proponent of that as well. So what he does with the minutes will remain to be seen. He might actually now shift back to shooting guard, which is his more natural position in college, given that Malachi Flynn is likely going to run the point. I had him pegged as the starting point guard, but I can see him now definitely transitioning to the shooting guard. I mentioned the 2-way contracts. The other guy that's on a 2-way contract is Yuta Watanabe. And I said in my piece, if Jalen Harris is the person with the most anticipation, Watanabe probably has the most question marks. And the reason being there is I just don't know if he's ever going to play for the 905 this season. Again, we talked about it only being 15 games, it only being about 5 weeks. He's playing minutes. He's averaging 11 to 15 minutes a night with the Raptors. The Raptors don't have a very good front court presence. So I think, honestly, he probably just stays with the big club the whole time. He's looked good. To juxtapose with Malachi Flynn, who hasn't looked great in the NBA regular season, he seems to really need the time down there. Watanabe doesn't really seem to need that. He seems a little bit more seasoned. It would be nice for him to get a few more minutes if he was playing in the G League, but I think he's just too valuable to the big club right now that I just don't see him going down there. He has been in the Memphis Grizzlies organization. He's played for the Memphis Hustle. He was All-NBA G League for the Western Conference last year. The season was never completed, so we don't know if he would have ended up with an MVP award or anything like that. So he's shown that he's very skilled in the G League. He's shown that he's very skilled in the NBA. I think he'd be a lock to probably lead the team in points and minutes if he were to play for the 905 this season. But I don't know. I mean, if he's already in the rotation, now that Alex Len is gone, I don't know who would replace him to get the minutes right now. So it would be nice to see him play with the 905, but I don't think that's going to happen. So next up, we're going to preview number 7, Kevin Harris. Harris was the 905's first overall draft pick this year. They took him 11th overall in the G League draft. I like this guy. I like this guy a lot. He reminds me almost a little bit of Ricky Davis. Hopefully he's got a little bit better upstairs than Ricky Davis. But he's exciting. He looks good. He spent 4 years in the NCAA as a member of the Stephen F. Austin Lumberjacks outside of Texas. He initially declared for the 2019 draft, but he opted to go back for his senior year, and he actually became the Lumberjacks' all-time leading scorer. He's 6'6", 216 pounds. This guy's pretty jacked. He's got the body of an NBA player already, and a pretty imposing one as that. At 6'6", you're looking at probably some small forward, maybe a little power forward when they go small. He had averages of 14.5 points, 5.5 rebounds, and 2 assists in college, and also 1.5 steals over his 4 seasons. That's over the whole 4 seasons. So he did progress as he went. I would have liked to see his rebounding numbers be a little bit better for someone that's 6'6" and sort of in that small forward range. But the 1.5 steals is great. He was an all-around player for sure, and he also shot 41% from behind the arc during his senior season. So great three-point shooter, great on-the-ball defender. He's very athletic, and he's very energetic, which are 2 things that I think 905 fans are going to like. Toronto fans always love the guys that hustle. And you're going to get a lot of hustle from Kevin Harris, which I think is good. And he's also a guy that wants to get to the hoop, which is something that oftentimes I find the Raptors in general and the 905 lack. There's a lot of down-low presence and then a lot of three-point presence, which is kind of Nick Nurse's philosophy anyway. He's more of a 3-and-D guy. But Kevin Harris is a little more in the mold of a slasher and a scorer. The only issue might be that because he's an all-around player, he doesn't really excel in one particular category. He does everything okay. We'll see if he can, ramp that up playing for the 905. Next up, Gary Payton II, a name that's probably familiar to anybody that doesn't follow the 905 or doesn't follow basketball. Is Gary Payton, Hall of Famer. And Gary Payton II is obviously his son. And he was the 905 second-round draft pick in the G League pick this year. He has spent a lot of time in the NBA, actually. So he came into Oregon for the 2016 draft, although he was undrafted. He's spent a lot of time with the Rio Grande Valley Vipers, which is the G League affiliate of the Houston Rockets. And he has bounced around quite a bit. He's actually played in 61 NBA games, but it's been for the Bucks, the Wizards, and actually the Lakers. And he has spent considerable time during all of those years playing for the Vipers. 905 took him in the second round. the first round was his second 905 pick this year. They took him 15th overall. I think this is going to be a defining year for Gary Payton II because he's 28 years old now. So theoretically, he should be in his basketball prime. And he hasn't really found a niche. He has spent, again, 61 games in the NBA, but he hasn't been able to stick on anywhere. He's played for 3 different franchises. I think this is kind of his turning point year if he's going to stay in the G League, if he's going to make the jump to the NBA. Maybe he goes overseas. He does play point guard. The Raptors, of course, are pretty log-jammed down there. And again, I wrote this preview not thinking that Malachi Flynn was going to go down to the G League. Now that he is down there, it's going to be very interesting to see where these minutes all shake out. That said, during his NBA stint in those 61 games, his per 36 minute stats are actually pretty good. 10 points, 6.5 rebounds, 4 assists, and the big one is 2.5 steals. So he seems to have inherited the defensive prowess of his dad, Gary Payton, who was known as the Glove, of course, for being so good at defense. And I think, again, I touched on earlier Coach Mutombo being that motivator or that inspirational guy. I think this is the perfect player for him to take as a protege and really motivate him and maybe be able to turn that key with Gary Payton II. And let's see. I mean, he's got, again, at 28, he's got about 5 years of his prime now. Let's see what he's got. I am excited to see him play. Next up, another familiar name is number 20, Juan Hernndez. So he was actually drafted last year, 2019, by the Toronto Raptors, 59th overall in the second round. And he spent all but 6 games in the G League last season. So I was lucky enough to see a lot of those games. I think he played 9 or 10 games in the G League, so I was there. So if you didn't know, I've been a season ticket holder for the last 5 seasons. Got to see the championship, the Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam championships. And transitioning more to doing this online, just in terms of distance, I live about an hour away from the Paramount Fine Food Center, and just family obligations. I can't make it out to 25, 30, 905 game or 20 to 25 905 games anymore, but we'll still be going to a few for sure once we can. So anyways, I saw a lot of his games last year in the 905, and he was a hell of a player. He was one of their best players for sure. He averaged 13.5 points, 9 boards, and 1.5 assists, also 1 steal and 1 block. So the thing with Juan Hernndez, and this happens to a lot of G League players, is that they're sort of in that in-between stage where they're a big fish in a small pond in the G League. They go up to the NBA and they become a small fish in a very big pond, and it doesn't always work out. And it's tough. We've seen a lot of guys that just destroy the G League. They go to the NBA, they can't really cut it. They go back to the G League and they kill it. It's a very interesting dynamic. It's sort of NBA purgatory, I guess you'd call it. But I am happy to see him back. They did release him, or didn't re-sign him at the end of last season. But now they're bringing him back into the fold. He was signed and waived specifically for the purpose of being put on the 905. I think he's got a lot more to prove, and I think that the Raptors, not just the 905, but the Raptors need a lot of front court help. And I think he immediately becomes their starting center if Watanabe's not going to be playing this year. I think Juan Hernndez starts the season with the 905 as their starting center, and let's see what he's got. I mean, he had a good season last year. He's a great rebounder. He plays great defense. He's 6'10". He's 24 years old, and he's hungry. So I think it's all there. But again, my concern is if he dominates the G League again, goes back up to the NBA, and isn't really able to catch on, what happens? And it's tough with these guys, those types of players. Number 11, Nyx Dotson. So he seems to be the guy that the 905 are really promoting this year as the guy. And no surprise, he's Canadian. He's from Mississauga. It's become sort of a tradition, it seems, for the 905 to always have a Canadian player on their team, whether it was Wiggins or last year Boucher. There always seems to be at least one Canadian player. I don't know if that's coincidence or on purpose. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that they do hold open tryouts. I don't know if they still do. I know 3 or 4 years ago they would just hold open tryouts and you can come try out for the 905. I think the G League has advanced a little past that now. I think especially with the new rule where, well, they've increased the minimum salaries, and with the new rule that the younger players can come in from high school, I think it's going to be tough to have walk-on players. But they have done that. That's how Wiggins made the it's Andrew Wiggins' brother. I forget what his first name is. He actually played for the Orangeville A's in NBDL Canada. But anyway, Nyx Dotson is a Canadian guy, and he's the NBA veteran exemption. So this year, the G League kind of did away with this complicated rotating waiver pool of NBA free agents that had over 5 years of experience. Even just saying that out loud is confusing and very boring. So anyway, they did away with that, thank goodness. So this new rule allows teams to designate one NBA veteran selection for assignment to one of their 10 roster spots. So basically, this allows NBA teams to directly recruit players they have interest in to their G League team. And, ideally bring them, see what they've got, and possibly sign them to the big club. So it's sort of like a two-way contract, but they can't bounce back and forth. So I think they signed Dotson just to have a look at what he's got, and if he impresses after the 15-game G League season, I think he probably comes up to the big club, possibly replaces Matt Thomas. If Thomas is shipped out, I feel like he's not really working out on the big club right now, but I feel like that's what they're doing with him. Dotson is 27 now, and he's played in over 300 NBA games, so he actually is a legit NBA veteran. He's an elite shooter. Unfortunately, he's not going to give you much on the defensive end, which is, the problem and why he struggled to find consistent minutes in the NBA. It's going to be interesting. It would be nice to see Dotson sort of find the JJ Redick magic, who, no pun intended, because he played for the Magic, but if JJ Redick, when he was 28, he was toiling around 8-9 points a game, and then I don't know whatever happened, but at age 28, he hit it, and he averaged over 15 points a game for the next 7 years. So if Nyx Dotson could do that, I think it would be great. I think along with Gary Payton, this is also a very big make-or-break year for him. Because what's next? He's already dabbled in a little bit of the commentating. He's been on TV a little bit. So are we going to see him shift more to that? What are we going to see? I'm not quite sure. But I do think that this is the thought process of he's close to home. Well, not close to home this year because they're playing in a bubble, but it's a hometown team. And should he impress, I feel like he probably makes it up to the big club by the end of the year. Now we're going to be getting into some players that you probably don't know too much about. These are guys that have not played in the NBA. They weren't drafted in the G League. They weren't drafted in the NBA. And this is kind of the fun part of the G League for me, is these are guys that... Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure the music is playing so there is some background interaction. Any questions so far at all about any players that we've talked about or that I've talked about? Anybody curious about maybe some more information about anybody? Questions about 905 games or the G League? Just excited to learn all this stuff. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. That's the fun part about the G League is that there's so much turnover every single season. I will touch on it later. I mentioned Juan Hernndez was a player that was on the team last year, and there is 2 more. But generally speaking, it's all new players every season. Guys either go overseas, they make it to the NBA, they just kind of fade out. It all sort of depends. So that's the fun part, is every year it's a blessing and a curse. You learn all these guys. I do these previews, and then halfway through the season, it's entirely blown up, but it's fun. So I think that's playing, and that's all good. I'm using the free Spotify, so there's ads, because I'm not paying for Spotify, so, So, next up is Trey Tinkle, which is kind of a funny name. But can you guess what Trey Tinkle's claim to fame is thus far in his young season? Ironically enough, in March of 2020, so right before the pandemic hit, Tinkle actually passed current teammate Gary Payton II as the Oregon State Beavers all-time scoring leader. So They actually... they didn't have any crossover because Gary Payton's a little bit older. Tinkle's just coming out of college now. But I'm sure there's going to be a lot of friendly competition in the gym this year because Gary Payton set the scoring record for the Beavers, and then Trey Tinkle came and broke that record. So despite going undrafted in this past year's draft, he does bring a lot of potential to the table for the 905. So in his junior and senior seasons with the Beavers, he averaged 20 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and 1.7 steals. His dad was the coach of Oregon State there, so maybe he got a little bit more minutes than he deserved. No, I'm kidding. But he does have basketball in his blood, and he actually did have a 3.9 GPA in college as well. So I mentioned earlier about Raptors always wanting character guys. They want guys with high IQ, whether it's basketball or just in life. And I think Trey Tinkle brings that to the table. He's going to be a very interesting player. The biggest challenge for him, even just transitioning to the G League, is going to be his quickness and his lateral movement. He can't really break down other players off the dribble, and his perimeter defense isn't very good. So it's going to be interesting. He's going to have to develop a consistent catch and shoot game, I think, to really excel. Even though he averaged 20 points and he sounds like this dynamic scorer, he's breaking scoring records. But when you come to the NBA and you come to the G League, everybody's really good. So I think he's going to struggle there. But I'm very interested to see. He's one of these guys that I feel like is either going to come in and really impress us or come in and not really play very much. I think he's kind of a boomer bust player. And now for a former college teammate of current Toronto Raptors player Terrence Davis is Bryce Tyree. So we actually played together with Terrence Davis at Ole Miss. And in fact, it was actually Terrence's departure to the NBA that opened up more minutes for Tyree and the opportunity to prove himself at Ole Miss. And he did. And I think I mentioned earlier, who was I talking about? Kevin Harris, about how his hustle. Toronto fans tend to love guys with heart and hustle. And basically, Bryce Tyree is just a big bag of hustle and heart. And it's going to be awesome. You know, you can teach skill, but you can't teach hustle. And a lot of times we'll see guys with a lot of talent. And that's the thing with the G League too, is a lot of these guys feel like they're a lot better than everybody else, better than the other players, and become sort of a one-on-one game. Stanley Johnson did that a lot last year. I know he's having a good season for the Raptors so far, but I was a bit annoyed a lot of times last year with him. I feel like he was trying to do everything and it hurt him. And now that we see him in a system with Nick Nurse, he's actually in a position to really excel. So the concern with Tyree is that he's 6'2", so he's a little bit on the shorter side. He is a slashing scorer who likes to get into the paint, sort of, I guess, like an Allen Iverson mold for a comparison. Problem is, that can work in college. That's a lot harder to work in the NBA. Nobody is Allen Iverson. Maybe Dwayne Wade was probably the next closest player to being someone as dynamic as Allen Iverson at that size. But Dwayne Wade was pretty jacked as well. So the challenges as he progresses is going to be whether or not his slashing style can translate to the G League game or the NBA game. And also he's proven to be a score-first guard. So he plays point. I don't know where he's going to play in the 905 this year. I'd probably shooting guard based on how many point guards they have. But he's the type of guy in college that once the ball gets to him, the ball kind of stops and he's either scoring or a turnover. So I do hope that he can keep the ball moving. I think that's going to benefit his game a lot, and I think that's going to give him the ability to do what he wants to do, because if he's just trying to drive to the net every time, it's just not going to work. But he's going to be fun. I think him and Kevin Harris, I wouldn't be surprised if they're the two fan favorites coming out of this season. They might not be the best players, and they might not be the guys that make it to the NBA, but I think they're going to be the most fun guys to watch. Next up is Henry Ellenson, number 4. So that's a familiar face. Talked about turnover. He's another player. There's 3 returning players, and he's the second, along with Juan Hernndez. So he's coming back for his second season with the 905. And last season he actually led the 905 in minutes played at 36.4. So, an G League game is 48 minutes and he played 36. That would be amongst the leaders in the NBA as well. And he was second only to Stanley Johnson, and Johnson only played in 3 games. So when Johnson was there, he played a ton. but he wasn't there very often. And Ellenson was down for almost the entire season. I think he played 40 games. He did average 22 points, so he was second in the team in scoring. And at 6'10", he's really excelled in the G League over the last 4 seasons. So he's played a lot of time in the G League, almost 4 full seasons. He's averaged 20 and 10 in the G League. So it seems silly to say he's fighting for an NBA spot because, of course, everybody in the G League is fighting for an NBA spot. But he does have some experience there, too. He actually has played in 81 games with the Knicks and the Nets. And shockingly enough, because when you hear the name Henry Ellenson, it might not ring a bell, but he was drafted 18th overall in 2016. So a guy similar to Gary Payton II. Stauskas has played a lot of time, so not quite on that level, but Gary Payton's played in 81 games. Payton has played in, what did I say? How many games has Gary Payton played in the NBA? 61, and Ellenson has played in 81. So he's of that sort of same mold too, where it's kind of make or break for him this season if he wants to make the jump. And it's another situation of sort of basketball purgatory where he's shown he can put up 20 and 10 in the G League, but he hasn't really shown too much in the NBA. So it's going to be a big year for him. He got the run last year playing 36 minutes, and it didn't really do anything. So I'd be surprised if he was back on the 905 next season, but we'll see. We've got 3 players left, and these are the guys that I didn't really know a whole heck of a lot about. We're going to talk about number 24, Alize Johnson. And he's a guy I really didn't know anything about going into this roster preview, aside from the fact that he looks like he's just going to be fun as hell to watch. So if you have the ability, just Google image Alize Johnson, Alize Johnson. He's a fun-looking guy. And I think he's going to be fun. And the more I read about him, the more I learned that this guy could be a beast for the 905. He's a 6'9" forward. He played in two seasons of college ball for Missouri State, and he averaged 15 points, 11 boards, so he's a power forward. He's actually been in the G League for the last 2 seasons, playing for the Fort Wayne Mad Ants, which is the affiliate of the Indiana Pacers, and he's averaged 20 points, 13 rebounds there. So he's definitely proven that he's got a skill set down low. He's a hell of a defender, and he can score around the hoop. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know much about him. He's put up the numbers. He hasn't really had much time in the NBA, so I've tried to find what's holding him back, and I don't know. So we're just going to have to see with our own eyes the reason that he hasn't made that leap. But I think he's another guy that's going to be fun to watch. The 905 really need front court help, and then Raptors need front court help, so he could do that. And I think perhaps more impressive than his on-court is his charitable efforts off the court. So actually in late 2018, Johnson launched the Alize Johnson Foundation. They gave out Thanksgiving meals to over 100 family in Williamsport, which is where he's from. He's donated basketball shoes for 3 county varsity high school basketball teams. And then in early 2019, he announced he was donating $145,000 to open basketball courts around his city as well. So it kind of sucks with the pandemic that the 905 aren't going to be in Mississauga this year because they do a ton in the community, ton of charity work in the community. Very involved. MLSE in general is a great organization for charitable contributions. So it would have been really cool to see him out and about in the community. So we'll see if he's on the 905 next year, but obviously there won't be any community involvement this year. But I think he's going to be fun to watch. Matt Mooney, number 31, is our second to last player here. The first thing I think, and I'll get it sorted out so I can share my screen at some point. I'm just doing this off my phone because my internet sucks. The first thing I thought of when I saw Matt Mooney was Big Country. So for those familiar, Bryant Big Country Reeves was a big, husky white boy that played on the Vancouver Grizzlies when they first started out. There's not much of a comparison. Matt Mooney's only 6'2", but he just has that build, and I think the way he carries himself is very similar. Last season, Mooney spent time split between the Canton Charge and the Memphis Hustle in the G League, so he's got some experience down there as well. And he's a very efficient point guard, both ends of the floor. 13 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, 1.5 steals, and 46% from the floor. He actually played 42 games in the G League last season, so he played a full season down there. So he kind of did a little bit of everything. Very serviceable guard. My concern, once again, is just this logjam at the point guard position. I don't want to say he's a pure point guard. He only averaged 4.5 assists. But in the G League, it's tough. If you've seen a G League game, it's very much up and down. There's a lot of experimenting going on. Nick Nurse has talked a lot about trying the box and one and trying all of his different defenses and offensives. And that's the point of the G League. It's a developmental league to try a bunch of different things. So it's not going to be as conventional in the sense of you're a pass first point guard, you're a shoot first point guard, but I don't know where he plays. He's definitely behind Malachi Flynn. He's definitely behind Jalen Harris and probably Payton Tyree. So I don't really know where he's going to play. But he's not a bad guy to have, and we'll see. You have injuries, you have call-ups. It's hard, again, usually when you have a 50-game season, you can try 50 different starting lineups, which they often do. We're not going to see that this year, so I'm not sure. And last, but certainly not least, certainly last, not least, number 10, Matt Morgan. So he's the third returning player to the Raptors 905 this season. Not a lot to say about Matt Morgan. That's kind of why he went last. He spent the entire last season in a depth role with the 905. He played in all 41 games, but he averaged 8 points, 2 boards, 2 assists, only shot 37% from behind the arc, but only shot just over 40% from the field. So he's another guy that's kind of three-pointer or bust, which is fine. Yeah, poor Matt. He's a fun guy to watch. When I saw him, he just, unfortunately, somebody has to be at the end of the bench on every G League team, and it might possibly be him again, but we'll see. He was undrafted out of Cornell in 2019. Scoring potential is there, and he showed that he can be an important contributor off the bench and plays good defense. But looking at the roster, he's a guard. So again, they're so log-jammed at guard on the big squad and the small squad. I don't know where he fits in, but we'll see. That's, again, the point of the G League there. So that is the Raptors 2021 Raptors 905 roster as announced. There might be a lot of changes. It's going to be a very weird, interesting season, being that we're playing only 15 games in a bubble, single elimination playoffs, and it's going to go quick. 15 games in 5 weeks, or about 4 weeks. It's going to go quick. So I did put a quick prediction for a starting lineup down, so it has changed a little bit with Malachi Flynn. So I think the rotation is going to be now. I'm kind of doing this on the fly. Starting point guard is going to be Malachi Flynn. Starting shooting guard is going to be Nyx Dotson. I don't think there's any debate about that. I can't imagine that the starting small forward is not Kevin Harris. Starting power forward, Henry Ellenson. I had my starting center as Watanabe. I don't think he's going to play down there, so I think that'll probably be Juan Hernndez. So you've got Flynn, Dotson, Harris, Ellenson, and Hernndez. And then your backup point guards are going to be, I think Jalen Harris is going to back up at point and at shooting guard. And then I think you've got Gary Payton and Matt Mooney as your secondary point guards. You've got Payton Tyree and Matt Morgan as your secondary shooting guards. So you've got basically 7 guys splitting 2 positions. And then your backup small forward is going to be Trey Tinkle. And your backup power forward, here's the issue, is that now they've got Ellenson, Alize Johnson, and Juan Hernndez. So they've got 3 guys to play 2 positions, and then they've got 6 guys to play 2 positions. And you kind of have Harris and Tinkle in the middle, which are really suited for small forwards. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an experiment. That's the fun of the G League. I put my schedule. I'll be streaming, commentating. They haven't announced yet where they're going to be broadcasting these games. Sometimes it's on Twitch. Sometimes it's on YouTube. If you're in the United States, they're all on ESPN Plus. If you're in Canada, a lot of the games are on NBA TV. I might already have said this somewhere, but do I have a prediction on how they'll play overall? That's going to be tough as well, because a lot of teams opted out. So if I'm not mistaken, I think there's only 18 teams participating this season, and usually there's 30. So I don't really even know how they're going to work out the playoffs yet. I don't think they know how they're going to work out the playoffs yet, whether they're just going to take the top 6 teams, the top 8 teams, forget conferences for this season, or if because they're in a bubble, they're going to maintain it. So on paper, especially with the addition of Malachi Flynn, I think they're very good. when I think of when they won the championship in 2017, their two best players were Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam. These are all stars in the NBA now. So the year after that, though, they had lost Fred and they'd lost Pascal, and they still went to the finals. So they had I'm trying to think of who the biggest name on that squad was. Boucher didn't come until the year after, so it's hard. I'm not even really sure. It's kind of tough, but I do think the biggest issue for them, their talent is there. It's whether or not they're going to be able to figure out how log-jammed they are at guard and how short they are in the backcourt, in the front court. So they have NBA talent, whether it's Jalen Harris, Malachi Flynn, Nyx Dotson, Henry Ellenson, Juan Hernndez. They have the talent there to be very good, but it's also going to depend. There's also the new GLeague Ignite team this year, which I haven't talked about. So the Ignite team is brand new this season. It's a collection of the top prospects in the game. And there we go. You're just about to answer their question there. What's my take on the non-affiliated GLeague Ignite? I think it's great. I think this is what the G League needs to get the notoriety that it deserves. I've followed the G League pretty closely for the last 5 years. It's incredible basketball. Is it the same level as the NBA? Of course not. But for $15, you can go watch guys that are going to play in the NBA that are either, down on injury stints or are on their way up. And I think adding the Ignite to that is only going to make it better. So the Ignite is made up of the top prospects that aren't going to college. So either they can come right from high school, or there are some overseas players that are coming over because they can get paid, so they can immediately turn pro. They can sign endorsement deals, and NBA veterans as well. So I know Jarrett Jack is on the team this year. Amir Johnson, former Toronto Raptors, on the team this year. I think it's going to get fans that would never normally tune in to G League games to tune in and get them hooked and get them watching the product. And at the end of the day, this is a business, and it's costing $500,000 to get a team in the bubble this season. And that's got to come from somewhere. And as great as the 905 are, and they've won championships, and they play in an arena that holds 5,000 fans, it's often half full. And I would like to see that grow, and I think the Ignite are going to do that. As a Filipino, the Filipino community has a lot of eyes on Jalen Green, of course. Many are disappointed Kai Soto is playing in the Olympic qualifiers over the G League. Yeah, I mean, especially we don't really even know what's going on with the Olympics. They didn't happen last year. Are they going to happen this year? That is interesting. Jalen Green has definitely the prospect with the biggest notoriety. It sucks that the pandemic had to happen the first year that they introduced the Ignite, because I think it takes a little bit of the shine off of it. I was so excited to go and watch the Ignite play, and you're going to have a lot more media there. You're going to have a lot more attention there. Amir Johnson, player coach role. It's a good question. I'm interested to see how the veterans work into the Ignite system. Is the idea that they're there as player coaches, like a guy like Jarrett Jack? He's got to be 35 or older now. So is he going to be a player coach? Or are these guys that are now going there to fight to get back to the NBA? Amir Johnson's had a very successful NBA career. So is his plan to work back to the NBA, or is his plan to be sort of a mentor to the young guys? So the biggest problem with just marketing and attention of the G League in general is that there's just not enough attention on it. Even the G League draft, I was finding out who the draft picks were over Twitter and Instagram. They weren't broadcasting it anywhere. They didn't make a big deal out of it. I wish they would make it feel a little bit more special, the same way AAA baseball does, the same way junior hockey, OHL, a little bit more pomp and circumstance would be nice, especially now that you're wanting to attract, I know most of the Ignite team seems to be former Raptors. I think if the idea is to attract these young players to the G League, and you're increasing wages and you're increasing salaries and you want to increase exposure, where is the exposure? So I think I'm giving them a pass this year because the G League's been run very well, and 905 has been run very well. I think it's just a situation where nobody really knew what was going to happen this year with the pandemic. Last year it was March 11th when they canceled the season along with the NBA, and it was it. The season was canceled. They waited and waited and waited, and it was finally canceled. And throughout the last year, I've been getting emails from the 905 saying buy your season ticket memberships, and they're going to carry over. And then we get emails saying it's not going to happen, and then it is. So I don't really think the league knows what's going on. They're sort of doing the best they can. They didn't, until 2 weeks ago, they didn't know how many teams were participating. So it's a tough year. I think it kind of is what it is. It was weird that the Ignite played 2 scrimmage games against each other, that they wouldn't allow the video to come out. You would think that they'd want to, put that on NBA TV. And they didn't. So that was weird, but I'm very excited for that. That game against the 905 is I believe it's their 3rd game of the season. So that is Saturday, February the 13th, 905 at the Ignite, which is going to be fun. I'll definitely be streaming that one. Game starts at 7 o'clock. So it's interesting. I think it's just going to be an interesting, fun year. It's going to be unlike any other year. You have a lot less teams. I think you're going to have a lot more movement because they're in a bubble. I think these trades make it a lot easier. You're going to have a lot less movement in terms of, last year, because the 905 play in Mississauga, ACC's 30 minutes, Scotiabank Arena, is 30 minutes down the road. You had guys practicing with the Raptors, Toronto Raptors in the morning, playing for the 905 at night, and going back and forth, which was very valuable, whereas this season you don't get any of that. So it's going to be weird. I think it's going to be an adjustment for everybody. I think the 905 has as good a shot as any. But it's going to be fun to watch, and I think that's the biggest thing of why I wanted to start doing this is over the last 4 or 5 years, the amount of tickets I'd given away to people and just say, just go watch a game. Just go to Paramount. It feels like you're at a Toronto Raptors game for $15. Of course, the beers still cost the same as the Scotiabank, and the fries still cost the same. But, all kidding aside, especially for families with kids, they do, kids can come on the court, they can meet the mascot, they can meet the players, they can meet the cheerleaders, etc. They were the first G League team with a co-ed cheerleading squad, the first G League team with a junior cheerleading squad. So it's very all-inclusive. It's a super fun time, so I'm just hoping to get more eyes on it, so when we can go back to normal next year, more people will watch it. So on that note, I think if there are no further questions about the upcoming season, this was fun. I'll probably wrap this up. And my plan for the season, again, is to stream the games that I can. There's a couple. The G League always has day games, so there's some 11:30 a.m. games that I will obviously not be streaming because I'll be at work. But any of the night games this season, I'll be streaming, and then probably staying on here for a half an hour afterwards to do a quick wrap-up. I will be posting stuff. I like the written word, so I'll be blogging recaps of the game as well for people to read whenever, and then maybe once a week coming on here and just talking 905, talking G League basketball. I think it's an underrated part of the basketball scene, and I'm excited. So thank you for I was surprised that anybody showed up to this, and there were some comments and some interactions, and it's fun. So thank you, Elmatic55. Thank you, Darcy. And I forget the name of the first person that was asking questions, but cool. You can find my stuff on my channel and whatever a sign out's supposed to be. And let's go 905.